Early trying to go up and under, but that's difficult even without Asia Wilson defending you. Beckers picks it up, puts it in.
When Caitlin Clark walked through the front door of her childhood home in West Des Moines on that cool September evening, her mother knew instantly that something in her daughter had shifted. It wasn't simply the slight limp in her right leg or the way her shoulders drooped under an invisible burden. It was the quiet, almost unbearable stillness in her eyes. This was the same daughter who had set college basketball alight, who had filled arenas and broken television records, who had been hailed as the heartbeat of a new era in women's sport. Yet now, standing in the same kitchen where she had once celebrated her scholarship to Iowa, Caitlin looked more fragile than Anne had ever seen her. The smell of dinner still lingered in the air, a comforting domestic reminder of simpler times. But the words Caitlin was about to speak would slice through that warmth with the kind of pain no mother ever prepares for. "Mom," Caitlin said softly, her voice trembling as though each syllable required all her strength. "I can't play this season. It's over." For a moment, the house fell completely silent. The kind of silence that follows only after something sacred breaks, and felt her heart clench, not because of the words themselves, but because of what they carried. The weight of her daughter's unspoken grief, the mourning of a dream that had defined her since childhood. What few people knew was that this moment had been approaching since that blistering July night in 2025, during a game against the Connecticut Sun, when Caitlin had felt something tear-deep inside her right groin as she exploded toward the basket. At first, she dismissed it. Pain was nothing new to her. For years, she had played through bruises, sprains, exhaustion, and expectations that could crush even the strongest spirits. But this time was different. The sharp pull didn't fade. It lingered, spreading like a shadow through her body and into her mind. Still, she kept playing, kept smiling, kept pushing. Had noticed the truth long before her daughter would admit it aloud. Mothers, after all, possess a sixth sense, an unspoken awareness of when something is wrong with their child. She had seen it in the way Caitlin hesitated slightly when getting out of her car, in the small grimace she tried to hide while climbing the stairs, in the smile that took just a little longer to appear. A mother's intuition doesn't need statistics or medical reports. It reads pain in body language, hears struggle in silence. So when Caitlin finally sat at the same kitchen table where so many milestones had been celebrated, the scholarship offer, the draft day, the first WNBA contract, and already knew what was coming, though knowing didn't soften the blow. Caitlin unlocked her phone and slid it across the table, and read the report slowly, her eyes scanning words she could barely comprehend. Right groin injury, bone bruise, complications during recovery, and then the line that shattered them both, season-ending prognosis. For Caitlin, the words were more than medical terminology. They were a verdict on the dream she had spent a lifetime building. "I've worked every single day for this," she whispered, tears blurring her vision. Hours in the gym, pushing through everything, just to get back on that court. And now, it's gone. Her voice cracked, raw and unguarded. These were not the polished tears of a post-game interview or the emotional weight of a championship loss. These were the tears of someone watching her identity dissolve before her eyes. The silence that followed was thick with heartbreak, the kind that stretches between two people who have no words big enough to hold their pain. Then, slowly, Anne rose from her chair. She walked around the table and knelt beside her daughter, the same gesture she had made decades earlier when a 7-year-old Caitlin had fallen off her bike and scraped her knee in the driveway. Back then, the wound had been visible, simple, easy to heal. This one was invisible and infinitely deeper. "Do you remember what I told you after you missed those free throws in the Elite Eight?" Anne asked gently. Caitlin looked up through tears, her voice barely audible. "You said that sometimes our greatest defeats teach us more about who we are than our greatest victories ever could." And nodded. "And what else did I tell you?" Caitlin hesitated, then whispered, "That champions aren't made when their bodies cooperate, but when everything falls apart and they still find a way to win." Her mother smiled softly, that same steady, luminous smile that had carried Caitlin through every heartbreak. "That's right. And this is your moment to find that different way to win." What few people realized was that, and had been preparing for this conversation long before Caitlin ever picked up a basketball. Growing up as the daughter of Bob Nitze, a legendary high school football coach in Des Moines, and had spent her childhood watching her father comfort young athletes after devastating losses, teaching them that true character wasn't built in the spotlight, but in the quiet resilience that followed defeat. She had seen boys cry in locker rooms and rise again as men. She understood that sport could both break and rebuild the human spirit. So when she became a mother, and vowed that her children would know their worth apart from wins or statistics. But Caitlin had always been different. Her fire burned brighter. Her ambitions soared higher. From the first time she picked up a ball in their driveway, she played as if she were chasing something larger than herself, and had watched her daughter's meteoric rise, from the small gyms of Iowa to national television, from hopeful recruit to generational icon. And she had always known that, one day, life would test whether that fire came only from success or from something deeper. "Mom," Caitlin said suddenly, her voice breaking the silence. "What if I never get back to where I was? What if this is what people remember me for? The player who couldn't stay healthy when it mattered most." And reached out, cupping her daughter's face as she had done 1,000 times before. "Then we'll show them something they've never seen," she said firmly. "We'll show them what Caitlin Clark looks like when she isn't just breaking records, but breaking barriers, when she becomes the voice for every athlete who's ever had to choose between their body and their dream." Her words weren't a pep talk. They were a redefinition. She reminded Caitlin of her high school ACL tear, the injury that had once felt like the end of the world. "You didn't just come back stronger," Ann said. "You came back smarter. You learned to see the court differently, to anticipate instead of react. That injury taught you lessons perfect health never could." Caitlin nodded slowly, her tears subsiding into a quiet, pensive calm. "But this feels different," she admitted. "This feels like my body is telling me something I don't want to hear," and leaned closer, her eyes fierce with conviction. "Then maybe it's time to listen. Maybe your body isn't betraying you, it's redirecting you. Maybe this is life's way of asking you to expand, to use your gifts in a way that isn't limited to the court." Those words struck Caitlin deeply. For so long, she had equated purpose with performance, love with legacy, success with the roar of the crowd. But now, sitting at that kitchen table with her mother's hand in hers, she began to understand that perhaps her story wasn't ending. It was evolving. Over the following weeks, as she began her slow recovery, Caitlin spent time mentoring young athletes, visiting hospitals, and speaking to girls who saw in her more than just a player. They saw possibility. She realized that the same determination that had driven her to the basket could now drive her towards something far more enduring, inspiring others to redefine what victory means. In the quiet that followed that September evening, and washed the dishes while Caitlin sat at the table, gazing at the familiar marks on the wall, the faint pencil lines that still measured her height from childhood to adolescence. Every inch told a story of growth, of persistence, of faith. And somewhere in that moment, Caitlin understood what her mother had always known. That greatness isn't measured by seasons played or records broken, but by the grace with which one faces the moments when life refuses to go according to plan. Her season might have been over, but her journey was not. For Caitlin Clark, this chapter, born from pain, nurtured by love, and sustained by purpose, would become the most defining one of all. Not because it ended on a court, but because it began at home, in the quiet strength of a mother who knew that sometimes losing the game is how.
Front, what a year she is having. The spark plug of this team, high arching shot of LA. They'll drive, they'll kick it out, they'll shoot. And
when the echoes of the season had quieted and the weight of silence filled the familiar kitchen of their West Des Moines home, and Clark finally told her daughter something she had kept close to her heart for years, a truth meant only for a moment like this. Caitlin had come home broken, not in spirit but in body, her right leg betraying months of pain and strain, her face marked by a quiet resignation that even victory could not disguise. "Caitlin," and began, her voice carrying that steady, maternal gravity that always made time seem to slow. "There's something I need you to know, something I've never told you." Caitlin looked up, surprised, her eyes searching her mother's face for clues. "After your college career ended, and continued, "I got a call from Sue Bird." Caitlin blinked in disbelief. "Sue Bird called you? When?" "Right after you were drafted," and replied softly. "She said she'd been watching your transition, seeing how much of the sport's future you were carrying on your shoulders. But she didn't call to congratulate me. She called to prepare me." Those words seemed to still the air between them. "She told me that players like you, those who come to represent not just a team but an entire movement, eventually face a choice that no one talks about publicly. The choice between burning out under impossible expectations or stepping into a role that changes the game for everyone who follows." And reached across the table, taking Caitlin's trembling hands in hers. "Sue said your greatest contribution might not be the records you set on the court, but what you make possible off it." The revelation hit Caitlin like a sudden flash of light breaking through storm clouds. Her tears, which had once been born of loss, now carried something else: understanding, awakening, and the faintest glimmer of purpose. "This injury," and said, her voice calm and deliberate, "it's not happening to you, it's happening for you. It's giving you something no victory ever could. The chance to discover who you are when basketball isn't the whole story." Caitlin's whisper came barely audible. "The chance to become something bigger than one player?" And nodded. "Exactly that." Caitlin stood and walked to the kitchen window, staring out at the old basketball hoop that had framed so many childhood dreams. "You know what's funny?" she said after a pause. "I've been so focused on what I can't do that I forgot everything I still can." She turned back to her mother, her expression shifting from despair to resolve. "I can use this experience to change how we talk about athlete health, recovery, and identity. I can advocate for better systems, better mental support, better understanding. I can show young players that setbacks aren't the end. They're an invitation to redefine what strength looks like." And joined her at the window, sensing a fire reigniting. "What are you thinking?" she asked. Caitlin's voice was steady now. "I want to build something, a program, maybe even an institute, focused on athlete wellness, not just the physical part, but the emotional and psychological journey too. I want it to be something that lasts beyond my playing days." And felt her heart swell. This was the daughter she knew, the one who turned pain into purpose. Caitlin smiled faintly through the exhaustion. "And I want you to help me build it. You've guided me through every chapter of my career. Now I want us to create something that outlives any trophy or headline." And was silent for a moment, then simply said, "I'd be honored." They spent hours that evening at the same kitchen table where every major decision of Caitlin's life had been made, from choosing Iowa to preparing for the draft. Now, that table became a place